My boyfriend of almost 3 years told me a series of white lies that to me seem more serious. Can't tell if I'm overreacting or if this is actually indicative of a bigger problem. My boyfriend and I have been dating for almost 3 years, living together for 2. We have a pretty good relationship, obviously with ups and downs, but we make it work and are happy. A little background on me and my boyfriend. I come from a single-parent home. My father was absent. My mother was and is by no means perfect, but she did her best with what she had. We were poor. Life was never easy for us, but we had each other. Since I was pretty young, I've wanted to pay her back someday. I've worked incredibly hard to be able to do so. I help her financially as much as I can and regularly pay her bills //send her cash. I'm also her only living child now, as my brother passed away 5 years ago, which basically left me to help her. I don't care, I love my mother, and the right thing to do is to help her when she needs it. But is stressful. This is relevant because my boyfriend described coming from a somewhat similar past, and it is something we have bonded over. Having the mutual experiences seemed to bring us closer. He told me he also helped his parents financially, and we would often vent to each other about the stress it brings. I am not one to confide in many people, so having someone who I felt like actually understood me was meaningful to me. So here is where the lies come in, and I need someone to either tell me I'm not crazy and this is horror, or that I am crazy and this isn't a huge deal. I'm fine with either. When we met, my boyfriend lived in a condo in a pretty swanky part of the city. I live in the US Northeast. He told me he owned that apartment / condo. I found this to be interesting / odd because he was 28 at the time, and I know this property is upwards of $650,000 on the low end, and he was in an entry-level job for only like 2 years, so the numbers just didn't really add up. Whatever, maybe he's good at saving. But then, since living together, I never once saw a piece of mail for a mortgage payment, electric bill, taxes, nothing. Not for 2 whole years. Very odd. Also, when we started living together, he didn't have his room rented out in the former apartment yet, so he was still responsible for that portion of the rent. He would send a Venmo payment to his mother on the 1st of every month for his portion. I don't own property, but I can't think of a scenario where I would Venmo my mother to pay the mortgage on a property I supposedly own. Getting more odd. He would then go to his parents' house for an afternoon and come back really upset. Usually when I would ask why, it was because they were having financial problems and he needed to help them out. I totally understood this and supported him. He literally has cried on my shoulder about this many times. He tried to start a company years back and ended up getting into debt somehow. He told me this debt was $17,000 and that he paid it off. I'm confused because I met him only 2 to 3 years after the supposed debt accrued / company dissolved, and it was already paid off. He told me when he moved back home after the business failed, he was $17,000 in debt and living at his parents' house working at a minimum wage job. How someone with a minimum wage job pays off that much debt in 3 years, I'll never know. We got into a fight a few weeks ago and I finally had enough and confronted him about these things. He doesn't help his parents, they actually pay his phone bill, and this was all a lie. He doesn't own that apartment, he didn't pay off that debt from his company. He initially told me his parents helped pay it off and then like 3 minutes later, came clean. And said that his business partner paid it off, so I have literally no idea what the truth is there, and if anything, in my eyes. His parents are the ones who are financially supporting him. So now, I'm dating a 31 years old man who doesn't pay his own phone bill, was lying to me and / or completely fabricating aspects of his life for 3 years. And then when confronted about it, continued to make up lies and then came clean about them 5 minutes later. I'm obviously concerned that he could lie for this long, about fundamentally important things like our values, and so on. I sincerely thought I would marry this man. He seemed to understand me like no one else and to be a truly caring and genuine person. Now I'm having a hard time rationalizing actually planning a life around someone who would not only lie about their background and family etc., but also financial aspects. Aside from that, I now can't tell what is the truth and what is a lie. I've also noticed other things he has lied about, called him out on it, and he has denied it outright to my face. I see this as a form of gaslighting, as I know I'm not wrong, but he is trying to convince me otherwise. Am I overreacting? Is this a white lie that went haywire? Or is this actually a series of complete and utter bullshit used to manipulate me? And also, is it insane for me to actually consider a life with this man? My partner has been through a lot. We had been dating for 2 years and planning a life together when she was diagnosed with cancer. At the time, she was in school for a dual graduate degree program and managed to finish it. Treatment was rough on her and she struggled a lot through it, and hasn't done well mentally dealing with the unfairness of it all. How different her body is after surgeries, and the fear of it coming back. All perfectly understandable, and I've been as supportive as I can throughout it all. Now, all that said, she went into the graduate programs after we started dating, and one of the degrees was at a very expensive school for something that was only related and not required for the work she planned on doing, which would never pay very well. I questioned her about it gently at the time, but she was adamant about getting the expensive degree. It was her life. And we agreed it would be fine, because we could utilize public service loan forgiveness to pay off her debt that would total $100K. This was before cancer. I earn a considerable amount more than her. When we started dating, I made 4x, and even with her degrees, I make 3x what she does. I've always been happy to spend money on her. And after having moved in together over a year ago and proposing shortly after, I really went into the mindset of it being our money. When we moved in, she was finishing her degrees and I covered 100% of our bills, including some tuition costs for an extra semester since she was slightly delayed by her treatment. This was totally fine because school was her job and she'd be able to contribute when she graduated, and even though I make much more, if we are both working full-time jobs, it felt fair. Now that she has graduated and started working, she is miserable at her job mostly because she is incredibly anxious that she isn't doing it well, and doesn't feel like her school prepared her. She was already prone towards anxiety and depression, she takes medicine for it. But mentally she is in a very bad spot because of all this. On top of that, she feels like she doesn't doing enough for her health, mostly exercise, to keep her healthy to reduce the cancer from coming back, but she says she is too tired after work to do much else than occasionally go on a walk. Recently she got the idea in her head to start working half weeks to give her more time to exercise and stress her out about work less. She says not knowing for sure how long she'll live has changed her priorities about working. Before all this, she was a pretty driven type of personality, working multiple jobs. But working part-time doesn't meet the requirements for public service loan forgiveness. We've talked about it extensively and she feels it is important for her to work part-time. But I am not very comfortable with the idea for many reasons. I get where she is coming from in her needs, but feel like she is looking for a quick fix to her problems. That puts us in a pretty big hole financially because she is so miserable instead of fully dealing with her problems. I'd be more okay with it if it was short term while she sorted through some things, but she says she just wants more time to exercise and be stress-free, so she doesn't know when that would end. I just feel like she is taking our relationship, which is already unbalanced, and asking to make it a lot more so, and solely because she is in a position to do so because of my job. We can financially afford it, but I haven't been able to come to terms about the disproportionality it would create in our relationship. P.S. My longtime partner wants to start working half-time to relieve her work stress and give her more time to take care of her health, but it makes me uncomfortable because she has $100,000 of debt and it would make our relationship very unbalanced. I am a 36-year-old male. My wife passed away 2 years ago. I have an 11-year-old son named Sean. I'm doing okay with money. I have a stable income and support system. I have a friend named Kate. We've been together since we were kids. She's like a sister to me, although she tends to boss me around. She's introduced me to her female friends, hoping that I'll settle down again. I told her I have other priorities and I'm required to focus on Sean and his health. He's diabetes. Kate thinks there's something wrong with me, but not everyone's circumstance is the same. I started noticing a pattern in her behavior after she introduced me to a friend of hers. She'd tell me to leave Sean at home when we hang out and meet her friends. She'd tell me to take down any pictures that have my son and wife in it because ladies will assume that I'm a single dad or still married, and that'd limit my chances in dating. I told her to knock it off, and she said that she was looking out for my social life, saying I'm ruining it and exhausting myself. I stopped talking to her for days. Then I decided to let it go. She's been insisting on bringing her friend to visit me with other friends. I agreed to have them as guests. Kate suggested I take Sean to stay with a relative since it'll be adult dinner, but I refused. He was comfortable in his home and didn't want to go. Kate was at my place before her friends arrived. I checked on Sean and told him to tell me if he needed anything before he went to sleep. At 12:30, while I was sitting and just starting to chat with Kate's friend while Kate kept blinking at me with a smirk on her face, I got a text message from Sean telling me he wanted to use the bathroom but the door handle was stuck and he couldn't open the door. I went upstairs to check. Kate followed me. I found that the door was actually locked. I was confused. I asked Sean and he said he didn't lock it. I started looking for the key. That's when Kate quietly handed it to me saying she took it. I was stunned. I opened the door for Sean, then I asked her why she locked the door. She said that lied to her friend about me not having kids and didn't want her to see Sean. She said it was no big deal since he was sleeping, but I was furious. I started yelling at her as she kept shushing me. Everyone started leaving after I yelled at Kate and cussed her out for doing this. She blew up after her friend left and said I was an idiot cause most people don't mention kids until after months into dating, and that I didn't deserve her help to move on when she thought I was a decent, sane person. I called her stupid and told her to get out of my house. She told me to wallow in my misery and left. Then her friends kept blaming me for making a scene and treating Kate like that, especially since she cooked dinner and helped a lot. My sister and her husband were sent to prison at the start of this year, and sadly won't be released for a few years. That left me to look after their 15-year-old daughter Amy. I was perfectly happy to do this, but as most of their wealth was seized for being ill-gotten, it's meant that I've been having to care for her out of my own pocket. Once again, this doesn't bother me, but it's meant massive life changes for the kid. Firstly, they sent her to a private school. I can't afford anywhere near those fees, so I had to transfer her to a local school. She was upset at this at first, but she quickly made friends and is excelling academically, so this isn't a huge problem. She's been off school for the last few months anyway due to the situation. A bigger problem is clothing. Like my sister, Amy loves fashion and designer stuff. She's still got a lot of stuff that her parents got her, but she's always on the lookout for new clothes. Unfortunately, I can't afford anywhere near the sort of stuff she likes. And I also have 2 children of my own whose clothing I have to pay for. I have told my sister this, but she insists I should make allowances because her daughter is going through a tough time. Amy also really doesn't get along with my daughter Hannah, who is 11. She bullies her, calls her stupid and ugly, tells her none of her friends really like her, etc. She has made her cry on many occasions and often continues to taunt Hannah while she cries. Yesterday I caught Amy trying to buy a dress costing over $1,000 with my card. I was fuming and had a long conversation with her. She cried and sobbed that she just wanted one nice thing. My sister called from the prison, and Amy cried over the phone that she hates here and I treat her unfairly. I spoke to my sister afterwards and she begged me to go easy on her daughter because she's still adjusting. I put food on this kid's plate. I buy her whatever clothes I can afford, even if they aren't to her taste. I take her to visit her parents as much as possible. They're held in different facilities. And I do all of that on top of working and looking after my own children. I told my sister that I was willing to look after her daughter for as long as she needs. But if anything like the card incident happens again, or if she continues to pick on my daughter, there will be serious consequences for her. My sister wanted to argue, but they get limited time on the prison phone. I think what I'm doing is right. I get that the kid is going through a tough time, and I'm doing everything I can to be there for her. But I can't just tolerate bad behavior or bullying, and I can't afford to pay for her expensive clothing. The fact that she's struggling to deal with what happened to her parents doesn't change that.